things that are so interesting, but at least we're not stuck in a traffic jam. So, welcome to you adventurers and explorers of life's biggest questions. I see some familiar faces and some new ones too. So, welcome to the newcomers. Thank you, Susie. Susie was trying to get on. Did she get a hold of you, Will? Will, did Susie get a hold of you?
She hasn't yet. Should I send her link as well?
Yeah, I told her to get a hold of you because she said that her personal link wasn't working.
I'll send it to her.
Anyway, thank you to Susie Cole, president of the Rossmore Interfaith Council. And thank you to the Big Questions Committee. Let me see, Channing is here. Raise your hand, Channing. And Ruth Ahern is here, and Sunshine is here. Thank you very much. Thanks also to Wilma Garvey, as you see, who is hosting our Zoom, along with many other things that Will does for Contra Costa County. He's the executive director. And I think Channel 28 is recording. I thought I was in touch with them. So if Channel 28 is recording, then we'll be on Channel 28. Probably in a couple of months. It takes a while. So I'd like to just tell you a little bit about the history of how the big questions came to be. We presented two big questions to the Rossmore Interfaith Council, and they had a rich discussion. One possibility of the big question was, what is truth? And the other was, what is the purpose of our life? So most of the council voted on what is the purpose of our life. So maybe what is truth will come forth as we explore what is the purpose of our life. You might find it interesting, you all might find it interesting to ask folks that you know the question, what is the purpose of your life? You may learn that some have not even thought of it, and yet here we are living our lives without knowing why. And what would you answer if you were asked that question? Of course, probably all of you who are here would have thought about it. Otherwise, you probably wouldn't be here. If you don't have an answer, or if you would like to add to your answer of what is the purpose of your life, then maybe you'll be able to cultivate one for yourself or add to the answer you have as we explore the offerings of 10 speakers. And who are going to be representing 10 different religious spiritual paths during the course of this year's forum. Today, we are beginning with Ananda, Paramahansa Yogananda's teachings, with Saiganesh as the representative. Our universe, on a universe level, this is a very big question, because all of our religions at some point attempt to answer this question. One of the ways we humans are different than animals is that we are on a journey in search of what makes us human, what gives our life meaning. Our speakers this year are going to use their personal spiritual paths in the exploration of this question. Not too long ago, my two granddaughters and I were experimenting with weaving, and we learned about the warp and the weft. I like to think that each of our spiritual paths that we're going to be exploring here has its own golden thread, which can be added to the wholeness of the tapestry that we're each weaving. And now I would like to introduce Saiganesh Sairaman. Saiganesh is a minister and teacher of yoga, meditation, and yoga philosophy in the tradition of the Indian master Paramahansa Yogananda. He grew up in a traditional Indian family, studying and practicing the Hindu way of life. His high-tech career brought him to Silicon Valley, making him a world citizen. He is a deeply thoughtful and clear speaker who shares the practical wisdom born out of many years of study and meditation practice. He serves as one of the co-managers of the Ananda Temple of Self-Realization in Palo Alto, in addition to leading meditation and breathwork seminars in academic and corporate institutions. Thank you for being here, Saiganesh.
Thank you, Sarah, for inviting me. Give me 1 second here.
It's good to see you.
It's good to see all of you. I want to start by saying it's always a pleasure. I don't have to tell everybody here how many Zoom meetings we have been on in the last 1 year. And it's always a pleasure to see a number of bright faces because I've also been in meetings where you just see boxes with names on them. So thank you all for your presence, your participation, and you know, coming together in this way, pondering on these big questions. Sarah was not kidding when she called this the big questions, because indeed they're big. And I want to read from Sarah's email before I even start. Why are we here? What are the factors that define our purpose? What is the purpose of humanity as a whole and purpose of us as individual humans? What teaching does your faith present to answer these questions? These were the questions I think that were chosen by the committee. I want to start again by introducing myself and where I come from a little bit. Thank you for that beautiful introduction, Sarah. Like Sarah described, I'm one of the co-managers, a minister and a teacher in the Ananda Temple of Palo Alto. Ananda is an institution founded based on the teachings of Paramhansa Yogananda. For those of you that are not familiar, Paramhansa Yogananda was a great Indian yoga master, guru, and a great saint who came to the US in the year 1920. This book, called The Autobiography of a Yogi, some of you may be familiar with. This was his autobiography. It has sold millions and millions of copies since it was published in 1946 and still continues to be one of the bestsellers in religious books even today. And Yogananda brought to the West not just the Indian traditional culture. He, in fact, did not bring any of the culture of India. What he brought were the truths of the Indian religion, what we call Sanatan Dharma, not just Hinduism. Hinduism is also a cultural artifact, but what Yogananda brought for us, those of us in the West, are the teachings of yoga and meditation, an understanding of life that is universal and directed towards God realization, how we can realize our own true potential as humans, and how we can have a common sense experiential understanding of who God is, and how that can be an inner experience born out of the practice of yoga and meditation. So everything that I'll be sharing today is based on the teachings of Yogananda through my own practice and the teachings of yoga in general. So these questions, I'm a very non-linear speaker. Let me start by saying that. So we'll be meandering through a few different topics, and I would love to have more of a conversation at the end of this if you all have something to share or ask. So I'm going to address these questions in a not exactly in a bullet point way or a PowerPoint slide, but through a discussion of what these teachings present for us and how we can tune into this idea of purpose in our own lives. I was reminded as I was thinking about it of a conversation I had with a friend of mine who currently lives in Italy, but she's actually from Belgium. And this person also follows the teachings of Paramahansa Yogananda, and that's how we got to be good friends. And she's of my age. She's in her early 30s or so. And she was describing to me how she found the spiritual path, why she decided to dedicate herself and her life to the spiritual seeking. And she said, throughout her days of growing up, through her childhood and teenage years, she was always drawn to ponder on the mysteries of the human mind. What makes us humans? Why do we respond the way we respond? What is life? And why do we feel the way we feel? How do we understand others? So obviously, when she finished high school, she thought she should study psychology. And she went to college to study psychology. She said in the very first course that she took, almost Psychology 101 or whatever it was that it was called in her university, she was studying in Belgium at this time. This professor was giving a talk on the nature of the human mind, Maslow's hierarchy, and how we function, and so many other things, how we understand the functionings of the human mind. And in the middle of all of this, she asked a question in the class. She asked this professor, Professor, where does the soul fit into all of this that you're describing? My friend's name is Ifye. At that time, her name was Ifye. And the professor said, Ifye, there's nothing called the soul. You can surgically open the human body, you can open the human brain, you can study the person as much as you want, you can put him under any x-ray machine, any MRI scan, and there's no shred of evidence that there's something called the soul. And my friend said at that point she decided this was not for her. She actually dropped out of college and she chose a different path in her life. But in essence, this question, who are we? Sarah beautifully described, I noted down as she was speaking. Humans, we are always on a journey in search of finding what it means to be a human. We are different from other animals. Not to say, it can be controversial sometimes when you say that humans are more evolved than other animals, because people are very fond of and attached to their dogs and cats and other pets. But indeed, humans are different because we objectify our existence. We are able to have a perspective of time that spans, and we have a choice on how we relate to life. Now, this whole idea of a soul and what the spirit of being a human is, from a skeptic standpoint, if we were to simply dissect the body or even analyze the mind, the answer is rather difficult to find. We cannot necessarily approach it, but we all know, not by by looking into somebody's body, or by looking into a scan or analyzing something, but we all know from human experience, by the experience of the years of life that we have had, that there is something called the soul. There is love and joy and these deep feelings that we are constantly seeking. And that is not just a survival instinct. It is more than just an evolutionary mechanism that all of us are seeking that in our lives. We are seeking to love and to be loved. We are constantly seeking to be happy and to avoid suffering on all levels: physical, emotional, mental, spiritual, on all levels. We are seeking this constantly. And it is not because of some kind of survival mechanisms that animals have developed and finally they decided to do this, but it is because there is this seed within us. There is this divine potential and seed that is in us that is reflecting it outside, and it's seeking that perfection in our own lives. We all deeply have this faith embedded in our soul that love and happiness and all goodness is by definition ours to have. So we move through life finding it, looking for it, seeking it, and we all have our own unique ways of doing that. Somebody thinks their happiness is going to come from the next car. Somebody thinks it's going to come from the next relationship. Many think it's going to come from more money or whatever it is, by turning the temperature in your room 2 degrees lower or by 4 degrees higher. We are constantly trying to manipulate our surroundings to find that which we are seeking, which we know we are meant to have. Now, the teachings of yoga define the soul, define that spirit of being human in a much more fundamental way than Western science can ever define. Yoga tells us that humans, and not just humans, all living beings in their fundamental essence are consciousness. We are all made of consciousness and we are consciousness. Now, this word can be a rather tricky one sometimes to understand or decode. I was describing this in a class that I gave. And at the end of the class, this person asked me, when you say consciousness, I'm assuming you're not meaning what doctors call consciousness. Because what does a doctor say, conscious or unconscious? It's just somebody's brain is functioning, whether they have vital stats, whether they have a pulse or a heart rate. And I said, thank God you got that. No, I don't mean what a doctor refers to by saying conscious or unconscious. Consciousness is sometimes tricky to define because it is a substrata of all our experience. Consciousness is awareness. Consciousness is perception. Consciousness is based on which everything else is built. And you can try and describe something, but you can describe an orange to somebody who has not tasted an orange by saying it's like a lemon but just sweeter and orange in color. And if somebody has not tasted a lemon, you can say it's like an orange, but just yellow, smaller, and a little more sour. But if somebody has not tasted citrus fruits, it's hard to describe. Now, that's not the best example, but consciousness is a little bit like that. It is so fundamental to who we are that it's hard to define in words, because words themselves are symbols, and symbols communicate experience, but consciousness is behind and beneath all our experience. Now, the Indian system also tells us that not only are we consciousness and all of creation is consciousness, animals, plants, even rocks, and everything inert in nature, but also God is consciousness. That what or who we perceive as that ultimate reality, divine reality, is also consciousness. The Indian scriptures, the Vedas and the Upanishads, describe God with this beautiful phrase, which I find the most appealing, because often people think that the Hindu faith or religion presents it's all about 6 hands and 10 heads, or all these different colors and flowers and rituals. But the Indian scriptures describe God with just this one simple word, Satchit Ananda. And what that means is ever conscious, ever existing, ever new bliss. And this bliss that we are seeking, this ever conscious, ever new bliss, is God. God is that ultimate, purest expression of who we are in our own human essence. And if God is consciousness and we are also fundamentally conscious and made of consciousness, then why is it that we are not experiencing that bliss all the time? Why are we not in that divine experience all that time? The reason is because we are also shrouded in a lot of other aspects of our own existence, from the rational mind, from ego identity, this belief that I am separate, this body, this mind, I am somehow separate and different from everything around me. And this is what keeps us in the state of Maya, as the Indian teachings describe, or the fundamental delusion of existence, because we are caught in the cycle of delusion because we are identified wrongly with our own reality. Our own true reality is that pure consciousness that is bliss. But we have identified with the mind, with our feelings, with our emotions, with the rational thoughts, with our ego identity, that self awareness and constant self preserving instinct that keeps us away from realizing our own true divine potential. So, where does the purpose of life come in all of this? The purpose of life, the purpose of any spiritual path, the purpose of seeking itself, the purpose why we are impelled to do all the things that we are impelled to do, is to grow and expand our own identity, is to expand our consciousness, so that from believing that we are this limited little self that constantly needs to think about and care for itself, we can expand further into a larger sense of identity, that we can know that I'm not just this person. This identity is only a delusion. I am pure spirit that pervades all of creation. Now, that's not a mere affirmation. To actually reach that state of realization, one has to truly expand their awareness. But we all do it in our own ways, through our own seeking. We do it by expanding our identity, not just with ourselves, but with our families, with our pets, with our friends, with the community that we belong to, with the state or country that we belong to. So we are all expanding that identity, but we are doing it in ways that draw us to seek greater happiness, to avoid suffering. Now, this whole trajectory, as the Indian teachings explain to us, of course, reincarnation is a fundamental tenet of the Indian teachings. And the way it is described is the soul is going through a long journey, a long trajectory of soul evolution from complete ignorance and feeling of separateness from everything else that there is, to this complete dissolution of any self identity and merging with the infinite. And we start from complete inanimate inert beings, from being a rock or a lizard or a fish, and then we evolve. We evolve the individual soul. I'm not talking about evolution in Darwinian terms, but I'm talking about soul evolution. We all evolve in that term. a dog cannot, as I was saying a few minutes ago, cannot objectify its existence. It's very smart, it's very intelligent, but a dog does not sit and reminisce about its puppy days. Dogs do not think about the plight of all the street dogs in Brazil. So it's just, they do not objectify, they're completely driven by instinct. But we as humans, we are able to objectify our existence. We are able to look at ourselves. We are able to take a step out of this ego, this mind and body, and also have the ability to look at ourselves. And the purpose of life and what we are doing in this long trajectory of growth is increasing that ability to objectify, to be able to detach, and to be able to look at the world with that impersonal eye, but with absolute and unconditional love, which is divine in nature, not personal, not limiting, but with this absolute unconditional love that we can share with everyone. So we are all in this journey and we reach that human point. That is a critical point in the evolution of our own soul, because at that point, we get this unique power, which is the power of choice, which is that no matter what's happening around us, our response becomes a matter of choice. Yes, we are always and deeply influenced by our circumstances, whatever they are in our life, the weather, the relationships that we have, the wealth that we have or don't have, the jobs we have, what we have to do, the conditions of our physical body, health or the lack of it. We are constantly influenced by all of that. But what we experience on the human level is consciousness, in the sense that we are not experiencing ill health or bad weather or bad relationship. We are experiencing our response to it. So, whatever it is that we are subjected to, there's always an element of choice, which a dog or a cat does not have as much. Humans, on the other hand, they get to exercise it. So, the purpose of life is for us to play with that element of choice itself, for us to know through life lessons by constant learning. And that's what the Indian teachings call karma. The word karma often has a lot of negative connotations, especially in the West, because you use the word when you have to justify something bad happening to somebody, or if you have to make yourself feel good about something, somebody doing something bad, and saying karma will catch up with them. Yes, it's not. That's one of the ways of looking at it. But karma is also unlearned lessons. Karma is that baggage that we carry with us that we are still learning. I'm still learning that my security does not always need to come from money in the bank. I'm learning that no matter whether this person treats me that way or that person is mean to me in a meeting, I can still be kind. So, karma is these life lessons that we are constantly learning that help us and take us closer to our own sense of that true identity in spirit, of knowing who we are in reality, that pure consciousness that is bliss. So we go about our own life the way our life unfolds. Our souls have this deep knowledge and they're drawing to us all these experiences that we need. Mother Teresa of Calcutta, she was a great Catholic saint. She once said, you know, um, God does not give you anything that you cannot handle. And then she followed that by saying, but I wish he didn't place so much trust in me. In the sense that we are only given, not only are we given only that which we can handle, but only that which is appropriate to us. When we talk about the purpose of life, part of it is understanding how we approach life, how we look at our own purpose. And a part of it is also understanding, why is this happening to me? That is also this broader understanding of purpose, because they are not separate. What I am doing and how I'm approaching life is not separate and different from what is coming to me and what is happening to me. I want to, yesterday, as I was meditating on this topic and title, I was reminded of a book that I had not picked up in a long time. This is one of my favorite books. This is so unrelated to the teachings of yoga, or that's not true. It is related, but not in the sense that you might imagine. This is a book, I don't know, some of you may be familiar with this. It's called Man's Search for Meaning by Dr. Viktor Frankl. And this is one of the most inspiring books I've read. I would highly recommend this. Autobiography of a Yogi and this one are certainly books that you want to have in your bookshelf. Now, since mentioned this, I have to give some context for what this book is about. Viktor Frankl was a Jewish person living in Europe during World War II, and he was imprisoned by the Nazis, and he spent a lot of years in the concentration camps. And Viktor Frankl was a psychologist and he was a researcher. He had a very, very sharp mind, and he had a wife and he had a family and he had children and all of that. One night, whole life shifted around. His family was taken away from him. He never met them ever again in his life. He was taken to a concentration camp. He does not even know what happened to them. And the last thing that he was holding on to were all his research papers and theses. And as the guards were pulling him into the prison, that was the last thing that was grabbed out of his hand. All of his years of research work in psychology and the understanding of the human essence, that was snatched away from him. And then Dr. Frankl spends all this time in the prison, in the concentration camp, and he realizes no matter what is taken away from me, there's one thing that these guards cannot take from me, and that is my choice. That liberty and freedom that is my own inner reality can never be taken away from me. Now, I don't quite I don't quite remember how Dr. Frankl puts it, but the way we would say it in the yogic philosophy or in the Indian system is what happens to us is not our choice, but how we respond always is. And that can never be taken from us because that choice is fundamentally ours. And the purpose of life is honing that choice. To live life in a way that we are not a victim of our circumstances, but taking an active role in choosing our state of awareness, our state of consciousness. I want to read a little bit from Dr. Frankl's book because I was just going through this right before this meeting. This was something that I'd highlighted, I don't know when, maybe many months back. I'm going to just read a few lines. In attempting this psychological presentation and a psychopathological explanation of the typical characteristics of a concentration camp inmate, I may give the impression that human being is completely and unavoidably influenced by his surroundings. But what about human liberty? Is there no spiritual freedom in regard to behavior and reaction to any given surroundings? Is that theory true, which would have us believe that man is no more than a product of many conditional and environmental factors, be they of a biological, psychological, or sociological nature? Is man but an accidental product of these? Most, I'm going to skip a few lines. We can answer these questions from experience as well as on principle. The experiences of camp life show that man does have a choice of action. There were enough examples, often of a heroic nature, which proved that apathy could be overcome, irritability suppressed. Man can preserve a vestige of spiritual freedom, of independence of mind, even in such terrible conditions of psychic and physical stress. Now, the reason I read that quote and why I wanted to present as a part of this discussion that we are having is the purpose of life is discovering that. And everything that comes to us, I don't need to know the specifics of anybody's life here or anywhere, but we all know that we face challenges. We are happy about certain things, but we're struggling with some things. It doesn't matter what those struggles are. Somebody's struggling with their weight, somebody's struggling with their relationships, somebody's struggling with their finances, somebody's struggling with how their own response to what's happening around them or whatever it is. But what we are in this journey discovering for ourselves is that vestige of spiritual freedom and liberty that is in us, that inner reality that is untouched by all of this. And the more we are able to cultivate that inner life, and that's where all of this comes to, because cultivating that inner life is the purpose of life. And by that, I don't mean just the practice of meditation. If you're inspired to take on the practice of meditation, I highly encourage and recommend that. But inner life is more than that. Inner life is our own understanding and discovery of our spiritual freedom, of knowing that this limiting ego identity is not in our best interest. It could be in service to others that we expand our identity. It could be by serving in a soup kitchen. It could be by helping the homeless. It could manifest in so many different ways. But we live with this understanding that the work I'm doing is in here, not out there, because the world will remain what it will be. And that is not a statement of apathy or indifference. We have a huge responsibility in contributing in positive ways to the world around us. But we also have this purpose that we are constantly seeking, which is that understanding and discovery of that inner reality that resides within us. And we are constantly on a journey in this long cycle of time, discovering that for ourselves, knowing who we are in reality. I want to end with a short story from, I don't know if this is from this book or from a different book of Dr. Frankl, but I remember reading it somewhere. There's a very old patient that visits Dr. Frankl. And this man is in his late 80s, and he just lost his wife of 50 years. So they were married as a couple for 50 years, and this lady obviously leaves her body. And they were so intimate with each other as a couple. They shared every moment in their lives, and they were so emotionally tied and attached to each other that it was devastating for this man. He could not imagine a life without her. And he had completely shut down. He was depressed and he did not find any meaning in life from that point on. And Dr. Frankel, who happens to be a counselor and a psychologist, he approached Dr. Frankel, and he was one of the patients that Dr. Frankel was visiting and treating. And Dr. Frankel asked a lot of questions to this man. And he said, after all that he shared about his wife and how close a relationship they shared and how many moments they cherished through their lives and how his life was so meaningless without her, how there was no purpose for him to live now that she has left this plane, Dr. Frankel just asked one simple question. He asked this man, how would you feel if you had left and she had been here and she was the one I was talking to? And then this man, without skipping a breath, he said, oh, that would be so devastating for me. I would not want her to suffer in that way at all. And then Dr. Frankel immediately looked at him and said, see, there's the purpose to why you're sitting here. So, in a sense, it might not feel like the most inspiring of stories. It might feel like this is a story of such great sadness and poignancy, but also it is inspiring and positive in the sense that the purpose that we are seeking is that nobility of soul, is for us to expand through our challenges, rise above them, and to discover that part within us that is untouched, that is not affected by that which is happening outside. And we discover that strength. We truly discover what we are made of, what our potential is as we go through these challenges, as we go through life, and we keep discovering it. And the more we discover, we ourselves become channels for light and love in this world, because the more we ourselves are unaffected by these challenges, we are able to radiate that centeredness, that calmness, that love that is unconditional and untouched to everybody around us. And that is lifting people's consciousness. So our purpose is not just individual in the sense that I'm trying to discover myself and liberate myself. That purpose is so closely intertwined with also serving all those around us, because we cannot survive. We ourselves can put one foot in front of another in this journey only by the compassion and the goodwill of so many others. So our journey is so incomplete and impossible to take on if we do not approach it with that same open-heartedness and sense of service. So that purpose is also tied to how we look at the people around us, whether it's just the few in your family, whether it's just one partner, whether it's your spouse, whether it's your dog, whether it's a community, whether it's a country. It doesn't matter what your realm of service is. Nothing is big or small. See, because all of this is about our inner reality. What is big is our complete opening of heart, not whether we serve 20 people or 200,000 people. It is about how fully am I able to put myself aside and give myself fully and dissolve that limiting identity I have. So I will stop at this point, and I will open for any discussions, questions on anything I shared, or even not anything related, any questions you want to ask me.
Thank you so much, Saiganesh. I took so many notes, And I, I encourage now people to ask questions and to share perhaps their own inner journey about some of the important aspects of the purpose of life that Saiganesh shared with us. Will, would it work if we just unmuted everybody, or would that be too cacophonous?
Why don't we start? And everyone has permission to unmute themselves.
Oh, good. Okay.
And so if they want to just raise their hand like this, or you can go to the reactions button on your app, and you can raise a hand like this, and that might help us see you as well. You can do it in your participants list as well.
Okay. So Vivian, please.
Yes, thank you so much. I have read the Yogi's book many years ago, and it really left a very deep impression on me. I would really appreciate if you could explain how there is such a conviction that there is reincarnation, and there is no such belief in my own religious tradition, but I really feel I have a sense that this has some truth to it. So if you could just expand on that for a moment, I'd really appreciate that.
Sure, my pleasure. Rather than, this is obviously not a theological discussion, and I don't enjoy those anyway. I'll just start by saying any faith or anything is only as useful as it is in our own journey. And no piece of information or faith is indispensable unless we want to think of it so. So, this idea of reincarnation, I completely understand and empathize with the fact that it is not part of everybody's system of faith or belief. Now, I I take that as sort of when I talk about reincarnation or when I see it in my own life, um, it's sort of I start with that in a sense of assumption because not only based on my own upbringing and the teachings that I was raised in, but also based on certain personal experiences. But here's what I want to share. One is this idea of the soul's journey, whether or not it includes multiple human incarnation, whether we return or don't return to this plane, um, some of the fundamental tenets all religions share are the same. So if this element is not necessarily important or an ingredient that one needs in their understanding of spirituality, certainly feel free to let it be or leave it out. The other part, if one is looking for proof or anecdotal evidence on reincarnation, I just want to share, even without being theological, is reincarnation is more of a worldview in which we understand who we are as we enter this plane. Like, for example, uh, I'm thinking of my niece, who is right now 5 years old, but the last time I visited India was about 3 years ago, and she was only 2 years old. And as this person was in a family gathering and she entered a room, and as she would speak to all of us, I could just notice that this person perhaps had a public personality before. She is so unafraid of standing in front of me and singing a song or in front of 20 people. I just shared, it might seem trivial, but what I'm trying to say is the likes and dislikes and our preferences and personalities are not always genetically, sociologically, or environmentally produced or informed, but rather somehow are innate to our nature. And that is not the soul's nature, according to the Indian teachings, because those preferences, again, are just an addendum. They're just an outer covering. So, where does that covering come from? And that, the yogic teachings tell us, is because of past life experience that we have had. Now, all this to say, even if this is the only life we all have, even if the soul incarnated from God and, our afterlife, we do never have to return again to another body, some of these principles of the soul's journey and where we come from and where we go still hold good. There are interpretations of the Christian Bible that take reincarnation into account and that don't. So I'm not an expert in Bible and I cannot comment on any of that. But the fundamental teachings of Christ or any great religion in the world talk about the soul's journey of how this one, our time in this world, we come from somewhere and we are going somewhere, even if it is not through multiple births and multiple deaths, it is still valid in the sense of the principles by which we want to live. I hope that was helpful.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Bridget, please.
Hi, thank you so much for your wonderful talk. I am a Sufi of Sufism Reoriented, and I've come from a Lutheran Presbyterian background, so I have several different views. But when coming to Sufism and introduced to reincarnation, it was as though something clicked within my own being that made sense. And from that point on, I just ran with it. It has been one of the fundamental shifts that occurred in my life. And I'm grateful for it.
Thank you for sharing that.
Thank you. Sharon Long, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. I was raised in a very dogmatic religion. I was raised as a Jehovah's Witness, but just in listening to you, it just occurs to me that dogma, it kind of traps the soul. It doesn't allow the soul to grow or to expand or to even think beyond whatever the dogma of that religion was. And I came out of that and actually went from that into metaphysics, which was a complete opposite, which was very freeing at the time. But it just, and that's kind of been my journey, is just continually trying to outgrow that dogma in my life. And I just appreciated everything you said today. It was very, very inspiring and very, very reassuring. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Sharon, if I may ask you a question, in your journey from Jehovah's Witness to metaphysics, how have you discovered, how has this journey helped you to discover your purpose in life? How has it helped you to be more conscious of your inner relationship with the divine?
Well, it allowed me to open up and look at myself. I mean, when you're trapped in a religion like that, you're not allowed to kind of look any other way. It's their way and the wrong way. And so it was the most freeing thing that ever happened. This happened to me quite a few years ago, that I was actually broke away from that. But there's still parts of that when you've been raised at such a young age that it's still, there's things that will doubt, that will. But that allowed me to grow and to experience who I was both through service and through my career and through my relationships with people. So it's, it was like being let out of prison. Seriously, it was not a fun religion to be raised in at all. So, but it was,
Thank you.
yeah. So and it helped me turn to more of a spiritual, turning things over to higher power instead of just, very stiff and cruel. The way God was, it was not taught. I don't know, it just didn't leave you a good feeling about it anyway.
Yes, I understand. I have a friend who escaped from that religion. Turning things over to God seems to be a choice. And I appreciate Saiganesh's emphasis on choice, that we as humans can choose our attitude regardless of what happens to us. And if any of you have stories of your own personal life about that, that would be rich to share also. So Ruth, do you have your hand up? Is that what that little hand means? Oh, okay, I see a little hand. Okay, so who else would like to ask us Saiganesh a question or to share a story of their own journey? Will.
Hey, thank you for your talk today. Just wanted to share that when it comes to reincarnation, the more that I've been thinking about it from my own Western view that I've been raised in, the more I've been thinking, even from a cosmological and a nature-based view, that it seems that the universe recycles everything else. Why not us? And it might be a part of, the way we answer that might be a part of either human hubris, that we view ourselves outside of nature, or we admit that we're a part of nature and admit our creatureliness, our createdness, our finitude, which is something that Christians will celebrate this week during Ash Wednesday. When they hear these words, ash to ash, dust to dust, remember that you have come from the dust, and to dust you shall return. And a reminder also that we, the carbon element molecules in this hand might have come from one star, and parts of the carbon elements that are in this hand might have come from a different star, and that we are stardust as well.
Thank you, Will. My journey, my foundation of my journey comes from the teachings of the Urantia book. And in the Urantia book, the idea of reincarnation has to do with waking up on the next world rather than coming back to this world. So tying reincarnation in that way of looking at it to what is our purpose here, for me, it's number one is to enrich my inner journey. And I do that by the practice of meditation and communion with God. I make an appointment with God every morning, and for 20 minutes, I set my timer. God only gets 20 minutes. No, that's not true. God is with me pretty much throughout the whole day. And then I take the energy or the inspiration that perhaps I might get from this time out to serve others. I love to minister to others in little ways. I like to cook. So bringing somebody something to eat who can't cook is a real joy to me. And we don't have to serve in great big ways like changing the whole world. We can't do that anyway. All we can do is just change ourselves. Thank you.
That's great. Yeah.
Go ahead, Dana. Yes, and then after Dana, Laura. Dana, go ahead.
I think it's Diana.
Oh, Diana, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I thought you were talking about me. Actually, people call me Daya, which means compassion. Well, I was raised in the first Universalist religion, and it wasn't even a religion, the first religious Universalist church in the United States. The fixtures were made by Paul Revere, and it was beautiful, and it brought my whole family together for whatever our memorial services were, and we all came from different paths. And most of my family was Jewish, and Saiganesh, I lost 13 members of my family in the Holocaust, and my father chose not to, and he was a leader in our community in Gloucester, Massachusetts, and left his name there, but he was called the savior of Gloucester. And culturally he was Jewish. The rest of my family were tied to the temple, and I thought they had the most loving, warm hearts. And I liked the freedom I had growing up in the Universalist Church. We weren't told that we had to even, we were told that we weren't told anything except that we went through. I had a Russian religious teacher who took us through all the world's great religions and said we all share the same great essence. And that is love, inner love, and sacred love. And to realize that we're all connected to each other. And I really like that. So I wasn't told what to believe. I was able to dig in and find my own answers. We had great ministers anyhow.
Thank you, Diana.
Yeah.
Laura, go ahead.
Well, thank you. I find your talk very interesting, especially how positive you are and just the way that you look at life. And I'm a Christian. I study the Bible, but I was pretty amazed at the similarities from what you teach and the teachings that you see in the Bible. But just Sunday, we were having a discussion about how Christianity or religion is not about rules and regulations, but really it's about love, like you say. And they said how Jesus came to serve the poor, the oppressed, the prisoners, the blind. The oppressed is people around us, the blind is the people that just have no purpose for their life, whatever it is. and that actually it's not about ourselves, but how we can help those people. And they said, look around us, and there's so many people we can help, just by giving to others what we have been given. So I think it went along with what you said, so I really appreciate your talk.
Thank you.
Thank you, Laura.
Wow.
Thank you. Do I see? Oh, yeah. Go ahead, Sunshine. You're muted. Unmute yourself.
Well, just for me, I started as a cradle Catholic, and I was very much in love with the church, and it was very simple because the Catholic Church taught in catechism that why did God make you? God make you to know, love, and serve him in this life and forever afterwards. But as I went along in Catholicism, all the way up to Catholic University for a year and a half, it was sort of my way or the highway with Catholicism. And also anybody that wasn't Catholic didn't seem to get to be in favor of God. And God always seemed out there. So along the way, I found the book Autobiography of a Yogi, and then it came back around my life in the form of Ananda, which said that God is not only out there, but God in here, in my heart. And so the purpose of life seems to be united, whether it's Catholic or whether it's Ananda or whether it's Protestant or Jewish, is in the search for whatever we call God and meaning. The purpose of, as Saiganesh said, to expand our consciousness and realize that we are a part of something greater than ourselves. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you, Sunshine. Channing, go ahead.
Hi. I'll start with my own journey and just say that I was not raised in any particular religion. I was raised in a spiritual but not religious family. So we never went to church, but we were very artistic and creative and very nature-based. And so some of my first experiences in consciousness of objectivity, where I was aware of the fact that I was observing myself, was when I was about 10 years old. And I was quite the tree climber at that age. And I climbed up into my favorite tree, and I looked around, and I had a spiritual experience. It was just overwhelming. And it sent me out on a seeking journey for the rest of my life. So I have sought God both internally and externally, going through several religions, doing specific practices on my own. And I think that the most important thing to me is the fact that in our culture here in the United States, we are very focused on the external world, the material world. And so we look for our identity in terms of how we look, our title in life, how rich we are, how poor we are. And those are just external markers. The real true essence of being is within yourself. And so for me, how do I access that internal essence? And for me, that is about going inward. And I found a wonderful picture, if I can pull it up. So I'm making a vision board for 2021. And this is representing that inner self, finding that inner self. It just shows that our being is equally made up of essence and soul, as well as the external parts of ourself, the outside parts of ourself. So I think that the inner space is something that we all should turn to as often as possible. For me, it's meditation. It's also walking in nature. It's being alone. It's being contemplative. It's allowing myself not to be filled up with a lot of external things. So as I'm getting older, you know, I've decided that maybe I'll do less and be more.
I'm very
Yes. Thank you. Thank you, Channing. So oh, go ahead, Leela. Yes.
Thank you, Sarah. And thank you, Saiganesh, for your lovely, lovely talk. It all was music to my ears. And, you know, I was born and raised in a Hindu family in South Africa. And my neighbors were Muslim and Christian. And I went to a Roman Catholic school. My whole family did. And so all that you have said, you know, resonates with me totally and completely. And along my journey in my life, having come from South Africa, I eventually became a member of the Baha'i Faith. And because of my growing up in a country that was so divided, so that seemed like a very natural step for me. And in what you said, and I think about this personal spiritual transformation, this journey that we're all on in the evolution of our consciousness. And for me, I also feel that as a Baha'i, that it translates into action in the world, that it contributes, that I feel that I should contribute to social transformation, to work for unity and peace, you know, in the world. So for me, when I think about the purpose of my life, that both those processes of personal and social really go together. But thank you for your lovely talk.
Nice. Very nice.
Thank you, Leela. So for sure, we just can't sit on a mountaintop and internalize God. I think we are required to come down off the mountain and serve. And Saiganesh really emphasized this with his story about Viktor Frankl. And I think a story about Viktor Frankl is that he found meaning in life by helping others, even to giving them, maybe a part of a piece of bread. But that's how he got through. I don't know how long he was in the concentration camp, but that's how he got through it, is by service to others. And you can't serve others unless, I don't think anyway, you can serve others unless it comes from the energy that comes from feeling God's love in your own life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Bridget, you had your hand up.
Yes, yes. I was just recalling something that has been an influence on my life, and it's a little bit of a quote here. God alone is real, and the goal of life is to be united with him through love. And that is something that I found helpful with whatever I may be approaching, whether it be service to the community, whether it be creating something beautiful for someone individual, or just being my best self, but being motivated by love and knowing that with this love, I am closer to the divine.
Thank you. It's easy to love those who are lovable. To me, the real challenge comes to love those who almost purposefully make themselves unlovable. And that's one of my challenges, is to learn how to listen to those kind of people, the ones who are not sweet and spiritual, and I don't have any answers to that except just to keep working on myself internally.
Well, I just finished reading the book of Joy, with the Dalai Lama and Desmond Tutu having a dialogue. And I'm remembering that the thing that can help you be of service and to love someone who you may find unlovable for whatever reason is to keep in mind they too are the divine. we are all the same underneath it all.
Yes, absolutely. And to those to whom the least of these, whatever we do to the least of these, God says, you are also doing to me.
Yeah, that is a good quote too.
You know. Thank you.
Sarah?
Please, Diana.
Yeah, and people call me Dia, but Diana's okay too. And I just, I'm taken now over to the peninsula where I lived for 50 years. And I used to go into Whole Foods, and I was very attracted to this homeless person that was sitting off in a corner. And she did not need any attention. She got Social Security, and her case was before Supreme Court because she had been evicted from her home in Silicon Valley because her rent was $1,300 a month, and they had it had gone up many, many times because they wanted to raise the rent so Silicon Valley could become Silicon Valley. And so her case was before the Supreme Court. And I was just drawn to helping her. And I thought she was brilliant, really. But she would sit in a corner, and she was all dressed in black, and her hat was black. And she said, yeah, could you help me take my carts back over to where I'm sleeping and not tell anyone where I'm sleeping? Which wasn't out in a field or anything. It was not far from where I lived at Ananda, actually. And she told me that she had been injured, and she had been sleeping in churches around Palo Alto as long as they let her stay there. And she had a great deal of dignity, and she was very smart. And then around Christmas time, the two managers of Whole Foods were very open-hearted, or that she wouldn't be there every day. And they said, as long as she doesn't bother anyone else and they don't bother her, she's fine being here. And she spent all her Social Security eating at Whole Foods, mostly. And I didn't feel sorry for her. It just kind of ticked me off that people have to live that way in today's world. And she wasn't feeling sorry for herself either. I thought about her quite a bit, and someone said I should have invited her back to the Ananda Cafe to share a meal with us. But I see that didn't work out because someone else who was taken in who was homeless died while living in the Ananda Cafe. And actually, but I think it was Saiganesh or someone went up to the hospital with him and held his hand and said ohms and helped him cross over. He smoked a lot, the person. He did pass on. I didn't know him. But. So I just learned a lot from this woman. And she said to me, and then one of the managers, and they were very sweet and kind, said, I don't know how people are going to feel when they're coming in the Christmas mood to see her all dressed up in black and black hats and everything. And I said, if you talked to her, you'd realize how much insight and how brilliant she really is. Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Diane.
Yeah.
Thank you, Diana. Thank you. So it's okay to have a little space while we take a breath and allow some folks perhaps who haven't shared to share. I know some of you, I know that there is at least one person with us who has been through and is going through a great deal of physical pain. And when you're going through physical pain, it's very distracting. And I don't know quite, I have never been in that kind of physical pain, but I don't know how people can do that without going to the inner reserves that we have, each of us has within us.
I don't know. I lived here at Rossmore for a long time, and I was sprayed by Roundup really badly after a winter of rain. It came up over my trees above my veranda and came down and hit me, and I fainted on the carpet. And I started speaking up about it. And people weren't speaking up about it, except at the Mindful Living Club, I got a lot of support to move forward and talk about it at our mutual board. And they could have cared less about it, but I just said, I just feel like I have to put the facts out there. And then I put a little article in the newspaper, but nothing blaming, nothing, just the facts about, you know, they were talking about how dogs were allergic and maybe Roundup was bothering them or something, but they didn't mention Roundup because no one dared to for the newspaper.
So one of our purposes can also be is to try to make the world a better place by being activists. That can certainly be a purpose. Have any of you?
Yeah, that got me moving.
Have any of you had an experience with getting out there and trying to help change some things? Sally, did you have your hand up? Sally Nordwall.
I was actually I'm pushing the reverse button just a little bit, and I'm going to go back to an awakening for me. And I can remember when I was I'd been involved in a very serious car accident, had gone through 2.5 years of recovery, and I was talking with my dad, and I said, you know, one of the things I had a chance to discover is that we have an infinite capacity to love. But the question is, how do we express that love to the individuals around us? And so when we talk about, are we ministering to a lady who is homeless and in a food store, there's a way to express our love for that person that's different from the way to express our love for, you know, Mr. Wonderful who happens to walk into our life. And so I think an important part of the journey is to discover these different ways of having a loving impact on other people's lives. And sometimes it challenges us to be open to letting somebody else love us in a way that we weren't expecting.
I think that's a really good point, is letting somebody else love us. For a lot of us that are really independent souls, that's a very hard thing to do, is to allow ourselves to be helped. And that is also a way of allowing God to work through somebody else. So thank you for that, Sally. Saiganesh, I'd like to ask you, have you heard anything that you'd like to respond to?
It's been beautiful, and thank you all for sharing and participating in these ways. It's been just a delight for me to hear all of you share. I can see all of you have so much more life experience than I do, so a lot of wisdom shines through in everything that you have to say. So thank you so much. And I don't have anything particularly, but I just appreciate everything. You know what, Bridget, you shared the quote that you shared about the goal of life being to see God through love. That is so beautiful and such a wonderful way of summarizing all of this. And what, Leela, that you shared about the need to always seek to serve the world around us and everybody else that spoke. It's been wonderful. And Sarah, some of the stories that you shared as well. Thank you so much all for participating.
Thank you, Saiganesh. Now,
Yes.
I think Deborah Mann, you had your hand up? Oh, you didn't? Oh. Do you want to participate? You know, I'd like to hear from others who have perhaps not had a chance to share their journeys or to share a question. We all have such riches inside of us, and this is a chance to share those riches, or how we're living, how we're seeking for the purpose of life. How are we seeking for the purpose of life? What are we doing? How are we doing that?
Going off on retreats.
Being quiet, yes, that's good.
And having
Gloria.
epiphanies.
Okay, Gloria, go ahead.
Or to stay out of judgment and lead with love. I think that that is a constant challenge in our daily life in this world, and a pleasant one to strive for.
Can you give an example of staying out of judgment, or give an example of what judgment is? Because I think we do that more often than we think we do. Even if we don't actually put it on somebody, we have it in our minds.
Oh, well, let's just take the current situation. It gives us such rich challenge is our political situation. I mean, without going into detail, it's just if you to expand our love to all those who do not think as we do, or who may not see it, is a very big challenge to our own desire and efforts to reach oneness. And it is really takes us back to also the judgment, not only of others, but of ourselves. And if that judgment, I've been rereading lately the Four Agreements by Miguel Ruiz, and he writes a mastery of love. And he was saying that the Toltecs look at us and say, in their teaching, that we live in a dream, but that dream is run by how we were domesticated, that we were domesticated like we domesticate almost our animals. And so within us, we have a judge, we have a victim, and we have our set of beliefs from our parents and our social institutions. And those have created a scenario that often gets us stuck, puts us in judgment, in self-judgment of not being good enough, or even in outer judgment. So it's that journey in the service, one, of others, but also of ourselves, to free ourselves to greater love, God and those around us.
Thank you. And that makes me go back to where Saiganesh started when he began to talk about we are consciousness. We are consciousness. And to become conscious, alert, aware of our thoughts. Mary Ellen, please go ahead.
Thanks. I'll unmute myself. I just learned how to do that. It's so delicious to come in right at this point, because I have realized that what you're alluding to, Gloria, about this sort of set of playing cards that we feel like we're stuck with because this was our past. Each and every one of the moments we have the choice of saying, is that still me? Was it ever me? Was it my grandmother? Was it 7 generations ago? It's all habit in my mind. It all seems to be a habit that we have taken as the truth. But habits can be changed, and it's exciting and zingy to know that. Each of the habits can be changed.
The awareness that we're striving for, it is a constant journey, excitement that we can change things.
We can, and we should. The other thing that the habit I am trying recently to not grapple with so much, but it's insidious, trying not to fill in the blanks. When a question arises in my mind or in politics or in the family, so often we say, well, he was thinking that, or, we fill in the blanks, but we don't have a clue. So to stay with the either numbness or discomfort or questioning, whether that brings up fear, whatever, but to stay with the blankness of not knowing the answer is a pretty big soul searching kind of practice. That's what I'm working on now.
And it is
exciting.
what that does is it allows space, and it makes me think of Sunshine in the Four Agreements. I think one of the agreements is not to assume. Am I correct about that? Not to assume you know what another is thinking.
Yes, that's one of the big pitfalls. Don't make assumptions, and don't take things personally, and keep your word and do your best.
Yes. Go ahead, Deborah Mann.
Hi, and I'm generally Debbie or Deb.
Okay.
And hi, those who I know and I haven't seen in a while. I see a couple of wonderful girl faces. Oh goodness, sorry. Anyway, what I wanted to throw into was Dick Powell's fantastic mindful class, which just mindfulness, I feel like, is exactly what we're speaking about. You know, your self-awareness, and then you can be so much more aware of where somebody else is coming from. And one of the wonderful tenets or whatever is to not react, but respond, to allow ourselves those few moments, as opposed to going back to our usual pattern, that we can rethink a little bit. Oh, and by the way, I did want to start by saying, was that Mary Ellen the winner of one of our Rossmore Advocates for Diversity Awards? Mary Ellen was awarded because, in case not everybody knows, she is the woman who every Sunday, I believe it's 11 to 1 p.m.
Right.
She is out there with the sign. So those who don't know who this is, that's who this woman is. And if you want to take over her one day, for her one day, I believe she's willing to have substitutes or company, one or the other. Anyway, so I just wanted to say that this is absolutely fantastic. And certainly people are just becoming more aware and woke. And that's what's happened to me also in my old age. Because someone's got to start getting the real history and what's been and what's fair and what's not fair. And all us retirees, and I know I'm one of the youngsters in a lot of groups, but we're the ones who have the time, the energy, and the inclination. So I feel like the journey for all of us so much is to turn somebody else on to the new information we just learned, regardless of what it is. And we certainly have had our choice of fantastic Zoom meetings to learn so much between all our fabulous clubs. So it's just been a pleasure to be here and to be a part of this. And let's all heal and help other people heal, because that's what we need to do.
Thank you so much, Deborah. And I appreciate that. Sandra, go ahead.
I wanted to say, first off, it's so great to see you, Debbie. I used to take care of her lovely, lovely dog, Daisy. Such a pleasure. And Mary Ellen, one of my pet peeves for about half a year has been, I realize how much people are filling in the blanks here in Rossmore. And so I read up on it, and our brains are kind of hardwired for that as part of the reptilian system, which was for self-protection. And so it's an old pattern, and it is very difficult to break. So there needs to be a lot of concentration on just being able to say, I don't know. I don't know the answer to this. Because when I moved here from Manhattan, and I remember saying, people would say, like, where do you live? And I would say Assumptionville, because I just couldn't believe how many people were assuming so many things and creating their reality from their assumptions without checking out the facts. So, which is very dangerous, especially in this political environment. So I'm glad you brought it up, because it's like I've not heard it from anyone else. And I'm okay with saying I don't know, you know. So
thank you, Sandra. And to be okay with listening. I'm trying to learn to listen. My habit is to want to not have any space. I'm uncomfortable with space. So if somebody doesn't have something to say, I will fill in the blanks for them. And and of course, that is making assumptions. So for me, learning to listen for the meaning behind what somebody's saying is hopefully increasing awareness. Ruth, please go ahead.
So I was wondering if Saiganesh could comment, and maybe somebody else also. It seems as though one of the things that we think is that the consciousness or the awareness of the world is changing. And I'm wondering if you think there is a cumulative effect, and if that is something that in fact you see as happening, and whether or not that's going to, how that's going to be helpful.
Sure, I'll share from my perspective and would welcome any other thoughts or ideas that people have. Yes, the answer is certainly a yes. There is a cumulative effect, and the consciousness of the world is changing. And quite contrary to what it might seem, I have, in the Indian system and also from my own personal experience, I think it is changing for the good. When I say contrary, because it might seem like there's a lot of conflict and polarization. And I think that in itself is a result of the fact that consciousness is ascending and there's a lot of awareness and energy moving in the positive direction. So the conflict that we're seeing is a temporary state of that resistance that is pulling it down. But I can just give a few examples just for us to chew on. Just this idea that how much more aware people are on even on an energetic level just in the last 30, 40 years. How much people, I might get the statistics wrong, but it's something like 53% of the US population today considers themselves spiritual but not religious. I don't find religion a bad word at all. It can be very useful and uplifting, but it's just also good to know that even a form like this exists, that spirituality is seen as a common ground for people to come together and find meaning and connection. Mm-hmm. All of these may or may not have been possible 40 years ago, 50 years ago, when people were hard-baked in their beliefs and in their worldviews. So I think there's so much more that could be said, even in terms of technology and even just this whole phase that we are living right now. I strongly believe that this past year and everything that has come to us, as unpleasant and as frustrating as sometimes it can all be, is a huge push from the universe asking us to grow and transform and be who we are meant to be. So all of this, I think, is expanding us in ways that we were not pushed to before. And there is a cumulative, there is a planetary consciousness, there is consciousness on all levels. And there is also the individual soul purpose and our seeking, which sits in the middle of all of that. And I think all of that is relevant, and I think it's all moving in the right direction on
Kali Yuga, yeah.
Thank you so much. I think go ahead, Sandra.
Being sort of sequestered, I had a lot more time on my hands. So I had been refraining from Instagram and Twitter, but I decided, all right, I'll join it. And Twitter became too much and I got off it. But Instagram was such an eye-opener for me because it opened me up to people in other countries and what their focus is, especially the young people. And I'm so proud of these young people. They are, with their optimism too, out there to heal the world. And they have ideas and they're not in isolation. They're very collaborative, these young people. It's very different than the way I grew up, where one individual would have an idea. Now it's turning into more of collective idea coming forward. And they're especially from young women. So there's a lot of heart in their direction and their focus on healing the world, and let's say for hunger or the environment, or elevating children through education, or just tilling the land in a new way, to feed the world. And they're all pretty spiritual as well. So it's just been a really uplifting thing for me to be on Instagram.
Yes, and as we look at the chaos that is happening around the world, we tend to think of chaos as being a really negative thing, but my limited understanding of chaos in the science world is that chemicals will disintegrate and go into chaos, and they will come back together and form a new and higher kind of chemical substance. And I think that that happens in our own personal lives too. We go through chaos in our personal lives, and if we have an inner foundation, then we can come out of this chaos and rise to a higher level. I see this happening in the world. There's, you know, the young people especially are leading rebellions all over the world, you know, in Myanmar and Brazil. And I mean, there must be about 15 different countries where the young people are putting their lives out there. This is their purpose. We are
Yeah.
not going to stand. We are not going to stand anymore for dictatorships and for all of the negative things that the greed. We're not going to stand for it. And they are willing to go to prison and be beaten for it. So out of this chaos is going to come a new order. There is a consciousness, Saiganesh. I agree, and I see it. It's very exciting. We don't hear it on the news, but if you're at all in touch with things, you'll see that there is a new consciousness that's raising out of the chaos. Will, please, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to share. Thanks again to Saiganesh. Just wanted to share a little bit of what I'm seeing as far as folks seeking spiritual practices to do in order to elevate their consciousness. And it's not just that we're conscious or unconscious, but I think there are certain spiritual practices in many of our faith traditions that are helping us reconnect with the all, however we define the all. And I think that there's, whether it's centering prayer or Lectio Divina in Christian circles, or meditation, different forms of that in Buddhist circles, or different forms of meditation service in Hindu circles. I think that our traditions have a wealth of practices that are there if we but use them. And I think one of the reasons why people are heading away from what have become institutionalized religions, and maybe that's what they're lumping religion into when they say that they're becoming more connected to spirituality, is that they're actually going deeper in the practices of certain spiritual practices in order to train their own consciousness to be able to experience more of what the universe has at this particular time. And I'm seeing that this is actually even occurring for secular people, especially people that are seeking spiritual experiences through ayahuasca or other chemicals in different plants, and the experiences that they might be able to only have if they go to a medicine man in Brazil that someone who's trained in the use of these plant medicines as a way of going deeper into having different spiritual experiences as well. And I'm wondering if Saiganesh can talk about psychotropics and the spiritual practices as a way that folks are using to experience the divine more in their consciousness and perhaps even evolve.
Yeah, that was very beautifully said, Will, whatever you talked about in terms of what institutional religion means. That's a very interesting question. I'm sure all of you know, or at least most of you were all present more than I was in the 60s and 70s when Ram Dass, he was a great spiritual speaker and writer who went to India, and his own spiritual experience was powered in the initial days by LSD. I want to answer this question with a very brief story. So Ram Dass had this altered state of consciousness and awareness by use of a chemical substance. And then he went to India and met his guru, which was Neem Karoli Baba. After that, he had an awakening. He came back and started his work in the West. And when he met Neem Karoli Baba, his guru asked him, what is it that you're doing in order to go into these states of awareness, to elevate yourself, to experience this kind of ecstasy? And Ram Dass pointed to these pills that he had in his pocket. This is what I take. And Neem Karoli Baba took a bunch of 10 or 15 pills and just poured them into his mouth. And Ram Dass thought, I've never met a human being that would even survive something like that. There's no way a human body. And his guru just looked at him and smiled, and nothing happened to him. in a sense, I think these are all sometimes extremely transformational, important steps in our own journey that help us break the notion of reality as we know it, to understand that this world is not defined by labels and forms as we thought it was. So it can certainly open our eyes to something much bigger. But I also think, in terms of building that true spiritual strength and the choice that I was talking about, ultimately we have to come back to the cold light of day and learn to do the same without the use of an external chemical substance, because that's what will stay with us through this journey, whether it's through many incarnations or just one life or afterlife. Because chemically altering the brain can certainly break some of those limitations that we hold. But again, we are brought back. And when we are brought back, it is a low that we hit and we are craving that even more. And that chemical is not the law of the universe or nature to be sustaining us in that ecstasy. We have now discovered or touched on something, then we start going on this journey to discover it within ourselves without needing that external help.
Thank you. Beautifully said. I myself had a great encounter with Jesus on LSD, but I certainly did not continue doing that. So we are about ready to close. Does anybody, thank you, Will. That's a very interesting question, by the way. Johns Hopkins University is doing quite a bit of research on mushrooms and perhaps even on other substances, as far as helping to open the doors of perception, open the doors of perception. So if, Leona, would you like to say anything? I know that I'm so glad you got on, Leona. Welcome.
I got back.
Yeah, I know that you were married to a Hindu man, and we're part of, I don't know if you were part of Ananda for many years, but you might have the last word if you want to say anything to Saiganesh or
well, thank you. I wasn't going to say anything because it gets too complicated if I try, but I'm very much aware lately in my life. I'm 96. Wow. And so I know I'm getting there. But years ago, I read the Bhagavad Gita, and recently I came across some papers where I found an article I had typed out of a library book written by Thomas Merton. And at the end of the book, part of which was his autobiography, 7-Story Mountain, at the end of the book, there was appended to this autobiography that he had written, the 7-Story Mountain. I did get it out of the library, and I found appended to it was an article, very brief, 2-3 pages, entitled The Significance of the Bhagavad Gita. And I did read it again. I read it years ago. I read the Bhagavad Gita, which I have, and all of that. But nevertheless, I became much more aware of what I'm seeing in the world, that poets and writers that are offered in college education courses, and people like Matthew Arnold, who wrote Dover Beach, and Keats, and all these names elude me now. But there is so much that has been known. And the Bhagavad Gita, it's all jibes with what Saiganesh was saying. I've never looked into the self. I've read the biography of a yogi years ago. But when I lately reread all these papers that I've saved, I've seen this basic message that Saiganesh has given to us today. this looking inwardly, that no matter what happens outwardly, it is up to us to find that peace and love and joy and beauty within ourselves. And it's religiosity and spirituality, really, it's what it is. And it's what Saiganesh has been talking about. And what the purpose of life would be, I was wondering, what, do we have a purpose in life? Not really. We dispense with things we don't need, find with things that give us a life. And the only way is the way that Saiganesh has described, looking within ourselves as our own reaction to events. And then I see it reflected like in Candide and Dover Beach and in Keats's philosophy and others. And it's widespread and known. And all this stuff is known by many, many people already. And I think it is growing. I think rock artists are finding it. Queen hit bottom, and that's where he left us when he died. Life doesn't mean anything, nothing. It's all nothing. It means anything. And someone else, a comedian, who says, you know, you just have to stop hating and stop negativity and find a way to live life, find a way to make it beautiful. Well, he doesn't describe how to find it, as Saiganesh has, but I think people are traveling in that direction. And I don't know for how long, but it has been an eye-opener recently for me. And I'm grateful to tune in on this, because my husband was not, he was religious in his own way, but not in this. It was dependent on ritual and so on in his religion. And he died 20 years ago, 30 years ago. So I've been alone for a long time as far as that's concerned. But I'm grateful for the chance to have this insight into this self-realization group.
Thank you
You
so
are
much.
so inspirational. It's beyond belief.
Thank you so much, Leona.
Yeah.
Wow.
You have,
Wow, yeah.
you have done a beautiful conclusion. Hey, wow. I'm going to thank Saiganesh for a wonderful talk, stimulating all of this sharing. Once again, Will, thank you so much for hosting our Zoom. I'd like to let you know that next month, and I'll send out a notice, next month we are going to hear from Nazir Ahmed, who has been a speaker before. He will represent the Islam religion, answering this question. You will find him delightful. Until then, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for sharing. It's just been so rich. And thank you, Saiganesh. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Saiganesh.
Thank
Can
you. We need to close.
Oh,
Thank you.
Okay.
God bless you all.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye.